Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanajari Yamuna Tiravanajari Jayurada Madhava Kundabiyari Jayurada Madhava Kundabiyari Jayurada Madhava Kundabiyari Jayo Mishtupad Paramahamsa Privrajikacharya Asto Tarasadashi Shimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shiro Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayo Mishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajikacharya Asto Tarasadashi Shimad His Divine Grace Shiro Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavanindi Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ki Jai Shri Shri Sita Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai Shri Shri Gauni Tai Ki Jai Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru and Garanga, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any announcements from our temple president, anybody? So it's 10 o'clock today, right? The next meeting? And breakfast is here. And then we're also meeting here. Everything is here. To see. Krishna's temple, everything is here. Perfect. That's right. And checkout time before 11 o'clock, unless you want to stay here long term. The temple is happy to pay for one extra night hotel for you as long as you give at least 3 years. Okay? It's a good arrangement. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Actually, it's kind of nice having the harmonium here because it's a little high. It's a very high chair. High chair, right? In America, high chairs are where they put children. So just because you're sitting on a high chair, you should maintain your humility, right? Okay, thank you. Well, that's good. Yeah, that's easier. Maybe just put this here or something. Okay, so I was going to read today because we get our choice of verses. So I was thinking this is leadership meeting, so let's read something from the Bhagavatam that's appropriate for leaders. So there's 2 verses I was going to read. One is from the passing away of Bhishma Dev. So it's 1st Canto, Chapter 9, text number 15 and 16. And it's kind of remarkable purport. I thought, okay, I was looking for some verses, and then after I'd chosen the verse and read the purport once, I read it a second time and found some pretty remarkable statements there that I didn't even catch the first time reading through in preparation for the class. So anyway, we'll discuss those a little bit. So the first verse is on the board here. Yatra Dharma Sutta Raja Gadapini Vrikodara Krishna Astri Gandivam Chapan Surit Krishna Tata Vipat Yatra Dharma Sutto Raja Gadapanir Vikrodaraha Krishno Strigandivam Chapam Surit Krishnastato Vipat Yatra Dharma Suto Raja Gadapanir Vikrodaraha Krishno Strigandivam Chapam Surit Krishnastato Vipat Yatra Dharma Suto Raja Kadapanir Vikrodaraha Krishno Strigandivam Chapam Surit Krishnastato Vipat Vaishnavis. Yatra, where there is. Dharmasutta, the son of Dharmaraj. Raja, the king. Kadapani, with his mighty club in hand. Vrikodaraha, Bhima. Krishna, Arjuna. Astri, carrier of the weapon. Gandivam, Gandiva. Chapam, bow. Surit, well-wisher. Krishna, Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Tataha, therefore. Vipat, reverse. Translation. This is grandfather Bhishma speaking. He's lying on the bed of arrows, and the Pandavas and Krishna and all the great sages have come to visit him because they know he's soon to leave his body. So he's speaking. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. So I'll say, you say. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhisthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion. Bhima, the great fighter with a club. The great bowman Arjuna, with his mighty weapon Gandiva. And above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. In case the AC is not cold enough for you, they give you ice cold garland too. They're just to cool you off before class. Prabhupada writes, as far as the material or spiritual resources were required, there was no scarcity in the case of the Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because the two great warriors, namely Bhima and Arjuna, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was the symbol of religion, and above all of them, the personality of Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna was personally concerned with their affairs as their well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. Despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management. That's the term I saw this. I thought, oh, this verse I got to read. Expert. We're talking all the leaders and managers. Despite the power of expert management and the power of weapons under the direct supervision of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses, which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. So I read 16. Nayasya karichit rajan pumam veda vidhitsitam yad vigigyasaya yukta muyanti kavayopihi. O king, again, this is Bhishma talking to Yudhisthira in the presence of everyone else. O king, no one can know the plan of Lord Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhisthira over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhisthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? Prabhupada writes with a question mark. It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishma Dev was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhisthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishma Dev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. Read this one sentence one more time. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue regardless of who tries to execute it. Om Gana Tamyanda Shajanan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Uminitamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapanantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first, just want to thank everybody for coming to this special North American leadership meeting in Washington, D.C. This is Kali Yuga, and this is Washington, the capital of Kali Yuga. But we're trying to maintain some purity here in Potomac, a little bit outside of the city. So thank you all for coming. And want to, on behalf of all the participants, thank the temple devotees, the local devotees here who worked especially hard, and especially our president, Anand Vrindavan, Devi Dasi, Haribo, for so nicely hosting us this year and for helping make sure, where are they? The Houston devotees maintain some sense of humility. They're not the only ones that know how to host the North America. They do an excellent job themselves, but it's good to know that there's other places also trying to serve nicely. So this year, 2026, we know, we heard some reports about it over the last few days, and some of us participate, a lot of people here participated in the big gala event in New York City, and of course we had the celebration, the big gala in Houston. So this is the 60th anniversary of ISKCON, and if you're reading the signs around, you'll see also this is the 50th anniversary this year, just July, which is just a few weeks ago actually, was the 50th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's visiting here. And like we had a few sessions in what was at that time the temple room, now the Prabhupada room, or the Prabhupada temple room there. So on that Vyasasan, Prabhupada himself sat there, gave classes, and the pictures here of him cutting the cake, you can see that's the same Vyasasan that's still there today. And the new one was modeled after that. The devotees that made all the arrangements for developing the temple, that was something that they made sure this Vyasasana is very unique. If you look at it, the way the lotus is there, so it's like a copy of, it's modeled after the original one that Prabhupada said and down below. So also, I hope everybody, while you're here, take a chance to read these different signs that are there explaining Prabhupada at the Great Falls, where many of us went for a walk the other day. Prabhupada walking from what is now the old temple up to this hill. His house was right around here. I think probably where Ananda's sitting was the edge of that building. So Prabhupada was in that place, and there's photographs here, the one closest to Vyasasana, of Prabhupada sitting in his room. So, and the verbiage there is very informative about Prabhupada's visit. And I want to particularly just draw attention to this one, some things I didn't know. Many of us have seen in the back of the Bhagavad Gita, I think it's still there, the reviews of different scholars, of course, are there. For many years, Shaligram Sukla. I was always wondering, who's Shaligram Sukla? I think it even says George. Where, who is this guy? Never heard him before, after, or since. But it's mentioned here. He was one of the people that Prabhupada met in that house when he was here in 1976. And he went on and wrote that beautiful appreciation of Prabhupada's translation and purport to the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada met with Georgetown scholars, big Catholic university, University of Maryland, the biggest one in Maryland, and George Mason, which one of the prominent universities, those three highlighted in Virginia. And the previous owner, it's interesting, Mr. Furman, I didn't know that till I read that the other day. He actually met Prabhupada. I know we hear a lot about Furman. This was a kids camp before the devotees got it. And there's still a lot of people in the area and devotees that say, I went to that camp. I used to come here and go horseback riding and things like that on this property. So Mr. Furman, I knew had sold the property, but didn't realize he actually came back and met Srila Prabhupada. Yes, please. Just recently, because I know every few years he pops up. And at some point in time, the property next door where the big house is was cut off and sold to try to make sure we could maintain this property because they felt they were really financially under distress. And just, 2 years ago, we were able to purchase that property back. And I think we found out later some of the people bidding were members of our own congregation. They also wanted to live next to the. So you can just imagine that all the donors were like kind of maxed out to build this place. And then immediately afterwards, this building comes up next door, more than $1 million. And again, can you please help out? And devotees stepped forward and did. So that was originally part of the temple property, now reunified with the temple. So Jai. How come you bring everybody else the microphone and you don't have a microphone? Where's that backup one? That's why the bells are there, symbolic of his roots. Wonderful. Jai Shisharada Madamahan Ki. So, a few lessons from his prominent representative. That Prabhupada, when he was here, took the time to meet with all these scholars and previous owners and other important people is very significant. We know Prabhupada wrote in a letter to Tejas Prabhu, he said that since we all live in this material world, sometimes we need help. He said that. We live in the material world, sometimes we need help. And he said, therefore, and he specifically mentioned government officers, but we can understand others from Prabhupada's action. He said, try to make them sympathizers. So it's an important lesson to also take home from us with us here as our Acharya. Srila Prabhupada took time out. He was meeting with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, so many devotees from the local community. Devotees would come from other places, wherever Prabhupada was, but yet he took time out of his busy schedule to meet with these different people. So just like at the 60th anniversary in Houston and New York City, there were so many VIPs that were there. I read yesterday some of the feedback, the appreciation from devotees that were there in New York. But how is it possible the Catholic Archbishop was glorifying Prabhupada, mayor's representative was glorifying Prabhupada, scholars were glorifying Prabhupada in ISKCON? How is that possible? It doesn't happen automatically. You don't just call them up and say, hey, would you like to come to our 60th birthday party? The response is, well, who are you? You know, why are you calling me now? It's the result of a lot of cultivation. And who does that? You can't expect there's no ordinary devotees, but you can't expect a member of your community and the temple to be the person who's going to naturally understand that. That's something that each of us have to do, following Prabhupada's footsteps. As this kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we need to cultivate friendships with these people in important positions. So, important lesson for us to know, to build those relationships and to think win-win in terms of those relationships. Just like we all know, as presidents, as leaders, zonal supervisors, you want to, you need to make sure you know the active people in the congregation, and everybody wants to know their donors. Well, similarly, you should want to know your neighbors, and similarly, you should want to know other interfaith leaders. Just like here, I think 2 years ago, Nanda Vrindavan hosted Thanksgiving interfaith event right here in the temple, and there was all these local religion leaders from the local community. There was like 60, 70 people. Makes very good friends. Today, if you come, I think this year they have a different parking lot, but for a few years, when it was Janmashtami, there's not enough parking here. There's only maybe 250, 300 total. We get 10, 12,000 people here. But we have buses that runs to the local Methodist Presbyterian church, the local LDS church, all the different churches, synagogue, and we use their parking lot. So there's that like win-win understanding is there. So it's an important lesson taken from Srila Prabhupada that these people we build relationships with, they can help us open doors, they can help us solve problems, legal issues, permit problems, funding problems, etc. So the 60th anniversary, just to finish this thought, then we'll go to the verse. It really is those of us that haven't done it yet. Janmashtami is coming up. After that, we got 4 more months of this year. It's a really good time to invite, if you haven't done it before, this is the time to invite VIPs, to invite the local head of the neighborhood, the local religious leaders, the local government people, the local scholars. We're having a celebration of our 60th anniversary. Oh, that's a big thing. Please come. Now's the opportunity, special opportunity. We can always do it. You can always go knock on a door, but now's a special opportunity. Okay, so this particular verse, and what does it mean for leaders today? It's a North American leadership meeting at this time in our 60th anniversary. So Rupanuga Prabhu is here, the president, director, Hubba. What are you of the GBC College? What's your official title? Servant, okay. The official servant of the GBC College is here. So those of us that went to the GBC College or have done other readings on our own, we know that many religious organizations, most religious organizations, they never last to their 50th anniversary. They come and they go. You know, the founder passes away, they're gone, or some other problem comes up. So it's special, even that ISKCON survived to its 50th 10 years ago, and now 60th anniversary is very, very special. And it is something that we want to celebrate, just like, I don't know if you got some feedback. Shrunga, are you out there? I can't see, there's too many people. I don't know if you got, we got some feedback. Why are we celebrating in New York City? Why are you spending money on it? It's just a glorified Sunday feast, right? Why is so much endeavor? It's a big deal. It's a very big deal for religious organization to survive for 50 or 60 years. It is something very much worth celebrating. And we also know our future is not guaranteed. We should understand it. It's not guaranteed. We shouldn't think like, okay, it's easy, we got it. So it's all sit back and enjoy our successes now. The classic example for us is what? Of a religious organization that fell apart. It's still there in bits and pieces. The Gaudiya Math, it was one organization established by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He envisioned it going all around the world, and we know they broke up because of so many different things. They're still there, okay? But we shouldn't think, oh, we're going to be so important for so many years into the future. Well, maybe, but maybe not. But it depends upon how we deal with, how we take forward the responsibility given to us by Srila Prabhupada. And what's interesting, we should know, as Prabhupada told us, he said, no one can stop us from the outside. I think he even wrote in a purport someplace. He said, we can only be stopped where? From the inside. So raise your hand if you're on the inside. Raise your hand if you're an influential person on the inside. Everybody in this room should raise your hand. Raise your hand if you, with your influential person, if you could really screw things up. Raise your hands. Okay? We need to understand that, you know. The potential for messing things up is right here. As we've seen in the past, as religion scholars tell us, as Prabhupada told us, as we've seen within the history with our own society. Historically, if we look at the last 60 years, our biggest problems were not like the anti-cult organization. That's easy. No problem. It wasn't neighbors. It was not other religions. I was thinking, I remember when I was in Denver, at one point in time, there was some kind of crazy Christian group. And it was actually called like the Love Something Church. It was like, really? That's who you guys are? They decided that the pastor decided that what his most important service, and I think he decided the way he'd become famous, to get the Hare Krishnas out of the airport. So they came to the airport, and they were like what we used to say, breaking up sales of books. They'd come up to people and say all kinds of nasty things. So the judge told them, they went to court. We took them to court. The judge said, you have to stand 10 feet away. You have your rights, you know, American freedom. You can come out, you can say whatever you want, but you have to be 10 feet away from those people. So they got really smart. So they went out, they literally cut 10-foot poles and stood like 10 feet away, like with the pole, and you're trying to sell him a book. I'd stand with my pole 10 feet away and say things. So that got back to the judge, and the judge said, come on, that's ridiculous. And at that point, I think he threw them out. He told them they couldn't be there. So, but, you know, they came and went, right? We're still selling books. We're still publishing books. Now, where is he? This year, we're going to try to do, where's our book distribution minister is out there? Young, he's not here today. He went and booked us. Very good. Very good. Very good. Why listen to Newton? Talk about it. Go out and do it. Much better. So we've seen, actually, that the real challenges to our organization have been when leaders fell down, when leaders took money, when leaders committed abuse. Those are like our biggest challenges, and they come back to haunt us because what happens when leaders fall down? Leaders take money, leaders abuse people, leaders become philosophically deviant. What happens? What happens? Whole community can get fractured, communities can fall apart, communities can suffer. What else can happen? What happens to individuals when the leaders have a problem? They lose faith. They lose faith. People lose faith. We lose resources. We lose strength. We lose focus. We lose our mission. Jai Shri Radhamadan Mahan Ki. So the leadership role is really, really important. Now, we may feel, okay, well, I'm not qualified. Well, you're qualified to mess it up. We should think like that. I may not be so qualified to lead us onto a bright future, but I definitely have full potential to mess things up. Please don't try. Just believe me on faith on that one. So how important are all of you? How important are the leadership? Very, 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 very important. Very important, super important. And we can understand we will be tested. Don't think, well, now I'm a leader, okay, it's all going to be cruise. I mean, the Pandavas, was it easy for the Pandavas? Leaders get tested. Like Gauranga Prabhu explained in class the other day, gave a nice retelling of some of the history with Lord Ramachandra. So many challenges. He lost his wife, he lost his kingdom. Bharati explained that. I didn't know that part of the story, but how his reputation was challenged. Everybody thought, oh, actually it was you. A whole conspiracy against Lord Ram. So he was tested, but he didn't give up. And so today in this section of Bhagavatam, in these verses, is talking about the Pandavas. And Bhishma Dev himself is saying how they were tested in so many ways. And how is it possible they were such pious devotees of the Lord, pious people is explained, and also great devotees of the Lord, great kings, great rulers, great warriors. How is it possible that they were tested, they were challenged? But then we all know, right, what were some of the ways the Pandavas were challenged? We'll start out with their father died when they were very young. That's a traumatic thing. Then they had to go and be raised in the home of their loving uncle, right? Was their loving uncle at every second. Behind the scenes, they're politicking against them. Imagine your father died and you have to move in the house with your cousins who don't want you there, knowing that the uncle doesn't really want you there. And at every minute, they're trying to do things against you, undermine you. They don't like you. They're envious of you. Not only that, your biggest, toughest brother of the whole group, they try to assassinate him when he's still a boy. A boy. They try to kill a boy. You know, only by the miraculous nature of the two poisons counteracted each other, right? The snakes and the cake that he survived. Then, you know, they try to burn you in a house of lack. They try to trap you in the house of lack. They cheat you out of your kingdom, right? They try to strip your wife naked in front of a whole assembly of people. I mean, these days there's like, you know, weird people like whatever they do. You know, they drill holes in bathrooms so they can see through the I mean, but this like in front of everybody. I mean, it's horrendous. And was it 12 years they were, because Ram was 14. They were 12, is that right? 12 years, and then plus one. And they catch you during their one. And Arjuna during their one, what's he got to be? A dance teacher. I mean, come on. Talk about humiliation, right? Of course, there's a whole story behind it, and he was cursed for the one, you know that. And then there's the war, The war finally comes, and what happens? Arjuna comes back for battle one day. Everybody's in a sullen mood. Nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody wants to look at him. What happened? Abhimanyu was killed. How was he killed? Nobody can kill him. He's so great of a warrior. No, what is it? 6 of them. 7. I mean, atrocity, horrific. And then, of course, at the end, even after they won, then their other sons were all killed by, what, Abhimanyu, right? Ashwatthama, right? Yeah. Horrific. So Bhishma is asking this question, how is it possible? How is it possible? You know, sometimes we think, I'm trying so hard, and obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. You know, like they say, it's a very common expression in ISKCON, maybe in the other places, but I really hear it a lot here. No good deed goes unpunished. Right? You do something nice, and somebody thinks you had some other alternative motive. Or you do something nice, and it backfires, isn't it? Like Ramacharya is here, you open like a new temple in the suburbs, immediately people are saying, close down the one downtown. You know, why are you wasting so much money? You know, you have a big party, a big celebration. Archbishop says about how glorious Prabhupada is. Some people say, why? Why'd you do this? You should have spent the money on the electrical bill. Okay? We all know that. You dress the deities beautifully. Somebody says, I don't like that color. Isn't it? We all know, isn't it? It's just the nature. It's the nature of this world. So it's described here. Bhishma is helping us understand, because he's talking to Maharaj Yudhishthira, the king, so it's a message for all devotees, but particularly I think for leaders here is described, that when we see when these obstacles come, and they will come, it must be the will of the Lord. It must be the will of the Lord. Somehow we can't understand the will of the Lord. It's described here, even Shiva, even Brahma, they can't, even the great sages, they cannot possibly understand the will of the Lord. It's so complicated. We can't understand. So then Prabhupada says, so what to do? As I was reading this purport, I thought, oh gosh, we can't understand it, but what do we do? But the very next sentence, Prabhupada says, therefore the best policy. He gives us a clue. He says, so we know we're also going to meet so many different reverses, so many different losses, so many different obstacles are going to come. The best policy, Prabhupada says, is to abide by the order of the Lord without argument. Krishna, I don't know what your plan is. I don't know why you have these people undermining me. I don't know why you have this money disappeared. I don't know why you had, sometimes you hear about, I just, invested a bunch of money to fix up a temple and the company goes bankrupt. Krishna, you could have told me, right? I mean, there was like 27 companies to choose from. I picked the best one, and that's the one that had to, you knew they were going to go bankrupt, Lord. You knew. I didn't know you knew, right? You knew this person I chose as a vice president was going to, I remember when I was in Denver, I just heard about it later. I was just balked at first, but like the vice president and was like some hanky-panky. Is like, well, what you knew, Krishna, why didn't you tell us? Of course, we have to do the best we can, but we have to understand the Lord may have some plans. Sometimes it's just to allow people to act out their ill intentions. We don't know what these different things are. But he says we have to, Prabhupada's writing, and Bhishma Dev is explaining, we have to understand to abide by the order of the Lord without argument, which means we have to have faith. Our whole life is a process of developing faith that actually Krishna knows what's best. I thought this was good for me, but actually it didn't go according to my plans. You must know what's best. You must know what's best for me. Right, Manoram Prabhu? There must be a reason that bus broke down yet again in Seattle. There's somebody out there that Krishna has a plan. He wants them to give $80,000 to fix the bus yet again. Because otherwise they might use that $80,000 on something else. So how do we know? Yes, somebody listening out there. Whoever's listening out there, you want to get rid of $80,000 worth of karma, call Manoram Prabhu. You got to fix the bus yet again. So it's interesting that Prabhupada says, in the first purport, despite the pious acts, despite the power personalities, despite the power of expert management, right? Sometimes we make decisions. It may be the best decision from a management perspective. Still things don't go right. People you expect are going to back you up. Sometimes they don't do that. Money you thought was going to get a certain result. Sometimes it just doesn't seem to do that. Things that were supposed to cost whatever, X amount of money, when you get it all done, When the gala's over, you still got to go find $12,000 a week later when you're exhausted. Like, huh? What? What must be the plan? It's the plan of the Lord. So what can we do? We have to abide by the plan of the Lord. So Bhishma, he's therefore making this conclusion. There may be so many reverses, but don't lament. Do your duty. So this really is important understanding for us. For Yudhisthira, what does it mean? Be the king. This is what Bhishma is going to tell him. You have to be the king. You're lamenting, and what's happening, your citizens aren't protected. That's what's that. By your lamenting over what you don't understand, that you should understand it's the plan of the Lord, the citizens are unprotected. Go do your duty, take care of the citizens. Stop lamenting. You know, he's there for Bhishma's there. He's about to die, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want you. You're my grandfather. I don't want you to die." And all these people, millions of people died. It was my cause. It's like modern phrase, "Get over it." He's basically telling them, "Get over it. Try to see things more properly." And for us, you know, how do we apply that in our context? It's similar things, similar principle. We know from the very early instructions of the Gita, there's going to be some happiness, there's going to be distress. Isn't it? One day somebody comes up and tells you, that was a fantastic event you just held. And then the next person says, that was really abominable. Isn't there? It wasn't very good. If I was in charge or this or that, you know, things would have been so much better. There's some happiness, there's some distress, there's some success, there's some failure, isn't it? There's some honor, you get honored, and the next day you get dishonored. So, what does it mean for us? It means we serve the Lord's mission, we serve Prabhupada's mission. We got 60 years through. What do we need to do to make sure it continues another 60 years, another 600 years, another 6,000 years, as has been predicted? How do we lead? How do we manage ISKCON? How do we care for devotees? How do we distribute books? How do we care for the deities in such a way to ensure that things move forward despite the reverses? So this instruction is very good for us because Yudhisthira, I mean, just like we know Arjuna said, I want to quit, Krishna. It's too tough. I don't want to fight this war. My relatives are on both sides. I just was listening to a lecture this morning in the verse where, Arjuna tells Krishna, I can win an unrivaled kingdom in heaven. I'll never be happy. This is a mess. I want to quit. And then Prabhupada describes how everybody's perplexed because we're all faced with these dilemmas. So therefore he surrendered. Krishna, tell me what to do. Please, I don't know what else to do. So in a similar situation, just like we see the Pandavas, they faced so many challenges, but they were determined no matter what to serve Krishna. So a very important lesson for us is to understand that as leaders, we will face reverses. This is what I want to talk about at the end here. We're also going to face temptations. There's like a new phase. I've just been really striking me lately. There's a new phase of ISKCON. It's like now, like it used to be like people, they see Hare Krishna, they'd run. Those guys. Now it's like, can you come to my daughter's wedding? It's a big deal. I want you at my daughter's wedding. I'll put you up front. I got invited some things recently, like I thought I was supposed to speak. No, we don't want you to speak. We just want you to sit in front. Right? It used to be like, and I was like, go get a picture with the Hare Krishna guy. It can go to your head, or a gal. Okay, it can go to our head, very easily. Many of us here, maybe most of us here, maybe all of us here, we're here because we quit traditions that were seduced by the temptations of money and power and fame and distinction. They had compromised. They completely had compromised. I remember I went to a church camp, and the last year I went there, I never got hired again. But I didn't go to Sunday service. So one day they came out and they were all handing like feathers to everybody, like a symbol of their love. And I just thought, this is so shallow. This is like, I was just completely turned off by it. So that kind of shallowness, we don't need that kind of shallowness. We don't need another organization like that. Lord Chaitanya told us what the three main things are going to be. Sex, which used to say women, these days for the men, but now, of course, so many leaders are men, or women, could be men, but then again, it could be men for men, it could be women for women. It's like Kali Yuga progresses, right? It progresses, but whatever that, sensual, sexual thing, fame or followers, and power, or what's power translate to? Prestige, money, money. It's very seductive. if we're not very, very careful. So we have to watch out for these things and not just think that success is great. Now we can enjoy the success. We should think success is very good for Krishna. And now I have to be even more careful. I have more followers than I had before. I've got more money than I had before. I control more money. I have more people famous. They're calling me this, that. Oh, this is dangerous. We should remember that. It's very, very dangerous. And the world doesn't need another organization that's sold out its integrity consciously or unconsciously because of the opulence that are there. And as leaders in North America and ultimately around the world, in the very near future, we need to understand, it won't be very long. We went through a period over a couple months, like once a week, one of Prabhupada's disciples was passing away, once a week. And right now it's kind of slowed down. There's a little lull in the action, but it'll pick up again soon. Could be 2 weeks before too long. And it's not going to be very long, a few months, a few years at the most, just like we make a joke, like the 75th anniversary of ISKCON. Maybe there'll be a few Prabhupada disciples left you can wheel on the stage, like the Queen. They can wave. Maybe, but most of us will be gone. So what does that mean? That's going to be a big challenge. It's a big opportunity. It's going to be a big, big, big challenge. I was a new devotee, relatively new. When Prabhupada passed away, big challenge. I can remember Satsvarup Maharaj giving a class in Vrindavan about don't think now that Prabhupada has left, it's your chance to take charge or take control or be the big honcho. He kind of was speaking like that as one of the senior most devotees. So we're going to have this challenge. Do I remain faithful to Prabhupada and ISKCON? Do I cooperate, as Srila Prabhupada said? Or do I see an opportunity? And we see that already. Wow, Prabhupada passed away. Okay, now my Guru Maharaj has passed away. Whoa, I'm an influential. Maybe I'm the most influential of all the disciples. Ho, ho, ho. Time to step up, And we see sometimes people even go and say, this happened a few years ago with one guru, was saying, Guru Maharaj, who had passed away, I actually understand he didn't really like the GBC. He didn't really like his godbrothers. He liked all of us. And of course, he felt I was one of the most, maybe possibly the most. So we need to band together, and it's us against the world. Those of you temple presidents and others here, and maybe women's ministry, ladies, Vaishnavi ministry. I remember sometimes in Denver, some young couple would get together, devotee couple. And for the first 3 months, there's like this illusion. It's you and me against the world. Because, they look in each other's eyes. I understand you. You understand me the way nobody else has ever done it. And we just have to stay together and, blah, 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 blah. In a few weeks, they're crawling back like, anybody give me a break? I need somebody else to talk to. And then they realize, let's have a little more mature relationship here. It's an important, sacred relationship, but it's not everything. Everything is there on the altar. Krishna's there. So in a similar way, to understand that whatever opulences were given, they can also be temptations. And if we succumb to those temptations, what good are we? We're no better than anybody else. The very dangerous thing we talked about with the devotee here this morning was he's in law school, and he's going to be a politician, perhaps, a political leader. Is not here right now. We're talking about the danger of shortcuts. As your communications director for some time, please don't take shortcuts. Please, 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 please. If the permit says you're going to get the building built in such and such a way, do it. If you don't have a permit, get one. If it says you're supposed to use 2x6s, don't think, hey, we can save $500 by using 2x4s. Don't do it. It may be okay for the short term. Down the road, somebody's going to fall through that floor because it's not 2x6s. Don't tell people, well, the money's for this, but it actually is for that. If they don't want to give to that, don't ask them to give the money. We talked about it just, the other day. There's a group of Vaishnavas in North America. They're misrepresenting themselves, who they are. They're getting money from people by means that hopefully none of us would do. And it comes back to bite you. You can convince that person who's maybe not so mentally stable to give you a lot of money, short term. What's the long-term result of that? It's not good. Mode of goodness takes some time. Mode of passion is quick, isn't it? Right in the Gita. It's quick. But what's the result? Distress. Distress. So we have to understand. Shortcuts on being accountable, just like we talked about North American temples. It didn't come up this year, but previously we talked about every single temple should get an audit. It's not a policy yet, but it probably should be. Why do you need an audit? It's like, oh my gosh, it's like $3,000. Well, because there's a lot of people give you 10 or 20 or 50 or 100. Oh, he's audited. They're audited. She's audited. The council. Okay, here's money. I'll give money. You're not audited. I don't trust you. So short-term versus long-term. Lasting gain. Again, with people, same thing. So this really amazing quote Prabhupada says here, even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, no matter who tries to execute it. So we've seen so many experiences like that. I remember some of my darker memories as a Hare Krishna devotee. On Sankirtan one time, somebody was doing, we were collecting money, distributing books at a big public event. Some person dropped their wallet, and the devotee thought, wow, Krishna's mercy. He looked inside, there was like $200-300 in there. Wow, Krishna's mercy. So I just need to make sure that nobody understands how Krishna's mercy is working. So he went into the bathroom, flushed the wallet down the toilet, came back to meet the policeman with the guy who was there to look for him. Okay? The next hour, a whole scene in this entranceway, probably as wide as these two doors. Thousands of people walking through. Nobody took a book. Nobody gave any money because everybody's looking to see how the Hare Krishnas are talking to the police. There must be a problem there. Understandable. Those people have no ethical fiber, blah, 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 whether they've true or false. That's the perception you gain. So short term, you gain $300, maybe. Long term, you lose thousands. What to speak of? What with the reputation? What do those people think of us? So we're the leaders. We got to stand the ground on this. Quote this verse, 9:1-9:17. Vice cannot conquer virtue, even if it brings some short-term benefit. We have the example, Srila Prabhupada was in the airplane one time flying, and there was some people way back, people were smoking. I think they were smoking. They were making a lot of noise, this or that. So they asked the flight attendant, could you please talk to them to keep it down, our spiritual master's elderly person, whatever they told them. So the flight attendant told them to be quiet. They quieted down for a few minutes. They started making whatever the disturbance was again. The devotee servant of Prabhupada went to stand up and go tell them, hey, we asked you once, cool it. Prabhupada stopped him. He was justified in going telling these people, quit making disturbance. Prabhupada stopped them. He said, if we cannot tolerate, what is the difference between us and them? If we cannot tolerate, what's the difference between us and them? So people in the world, we all know, they are faithless. They're losing hope. The politicians, so many, way beyond what he used to do. Lying and cheating all around the world. I know we have this global communications call. We can't even talk about stuff because we don't know who's listening to certain parts of the world, And, of course, in America, so many problems. So the world today, the world is full of nationalistic organizations, and they all hate each other. Devotee Prajumna Prabhu, he's one of the heroes of the communications in Leicester, England. There was a problem where, some competition, India and Pakistan, somebody won, somebody lost, and some young men in England, I don't remember which side was which, they marched through the other neighborhood, yay. And then I think then there was like a counter march, so the Pakistani people went to the Muslims went to the Hindu neighborhood, the Hindus went to and it was became a big scene. So Prajumna Prabhu organized, because he had relationships he'd built up ahead of time. He went and he was the spokesperson, the Hindu spokesperson in front of a mosque about how this is not us. Went out all these 18-year-old over-testosterone males who have to show how tough they are. We are the people that live here together day in and day out, and we are here to say this is not our values. We don't agree with this sectarianism, polarization. We are friends. We work together. We have different religious systems, but we respect each other. Made big national news. The king, who had recently become the king, the queen had died, called to ask him and the local police chiefs and somebody, please come and tell me, what did you do? How did you do that? How's it possible? So the king notices. So what about the supreme king? He doesn't notice? And if we just feed the nationalistic mentalities, we feed there's most terrorist organizations in the world, what's behind all their terrorism? Religion. Isn't it? They're all convinced God's on our side. God's on our side. He wants me to kill you. He wants me to burn your house. He wants me to rape your women. He wants me to destroy your villages. So what's the difference? You know, who knows who's right? Right? Sometimes you see those cartoons, kill everybody, let God sort it out. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is we have to do what's right in whatever situation. The world is going to hell. This verse is explaining that those that have faith in the Lord have faith in his plan despite the reverses, despite the difficulties. We have to stick by the order of the Lord. Even you go downtown, if you have some time, it's very interesting. You go down, you look at the Lincoln Memorial, the second inaugural address by Lincoln. He was, I don't know where he was talking about how every drop of blood paid by the whip of the slave owner may have to be killed by the sword. Balanced. It's like he had some understanding of karma, you know. But then he said, let us all go forward as best we can understand the will of the Lord. Let's understand how to do what's right as best we can understand what's right. So that takes some humility. We try to do what Krishna wants us to do, but always be open to try to figure out what ways I'm falling short, how I can do better, and to be committed. How can ISKCON be different? We don't want to go down the path of taking shortcuts. That's not who we are. We don't want to go down the path of like, okay, you become famous and you compromise everything. You know, we don't want to go down the path that you make some money. You know, I'll give you some money, you take some shortcut. I'm reading this book about how gambling became legal in America. Until the 1990s, all the sports, the leagues, the head of the leagues, hockey league, basketball, baseball, they all said, no, forget it. You can't do this. It's going to ruin our sport. You're going to bring in gambling, it's going to ruin it. And then they were convinced there's a lot of money to be made. Billions of dollars in sports gambling now. They threw it all out the window. All the ethical sports, and we wanted people for, you know, be good, upstanding. They threw it all out because you can make money. And now they're seeing it's destroying the whole quality of what should be a little bit of a pure activity amongst young people. So in ISKCON, we have to make this determination. We're going to be different. It's not about the number of followers. As Prabhupada said, boil the milk. We have enough followers. Boil the milk. We know we want to expand, but we have to be focused about quality as well. And about our commitment is we want to see everyone as God's children, Krishna's parts and parcels. We want to maintain ourselves as humble servants and to do the right thing to please Krishna. And as Bhishma Dev is saying here, there will be reverses, but don't stop doing the right thing. Don't stop spreading the movement based on the principles of Krishna consciousness. Don't take shortcuts, because if we do, it's going to undermine our whole society. Make sure we're loyal to Srila Prabhupada. We may have debates among us about what's the right way to do things. That's okay. But that we, as best we understand what's the right way to do, we're committed to do that. And in this way, as Bhishma is saying here, and as Prabhupada is saying, eventually they won because they took the right path. Even Bhishma Dev, he was, you know, he took the wrong side. And again, I'll end it with this. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue regardless of who tries to execute it. So let's make sure we're on the right side and we don't go down and be another name in history of religious organizations that became seduced and gave up their principles for some temporary material gain. That's the challenge that awaits us in the next few decades. In the past, we were just little guys. I mean, there's no question of being, you know, we're too famous. That wasn't a problem. We have too much money. That was not a problem. You know, we have too much influence. That was not a problem. But now it's gaining more and more and more. Are those the most important values to us, or the fact that we stick to what it actually means to be Christian conscious? So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments anybody like to make? Yes, Maharaj, Bir Krishna Maharaj has his hand way up in the sky. A controversial question? No, we don't allow those. That's okay. Yes. I can repeat the question, Maharaj. Yeah, and we have no idea what controversy you're speaking about, Maharaj. Pray, suffer reverses, and don't compromise. I mean, the Pandavas. I mean, they were right from the very beginning. It was their kingdom. You know, Yudhishthir was cheated into going into uh, 12 years in the forest, and he knew he was cheated, but he didn't want to give up his dharma. He didn't give up his position. And eventually, you know, you read the Mahabharata, there were at least a few days there, Yudhishthir was fighting tougher than anybody was. And also, you know, Krishna himself went and tried to negotiate peace. I mean, it's like they're at the battle on the edge of it, and Yudhishthir sends Krishna, you try. We've tried everything else, please you try. And Krishna went, of course, and they tried to kidnap him. So it's like, okay, now you've really done it. So, I mean, that's a great challenge for our age. I mean, the big argument is on that issue is, okay, do you maintain your commitment to this broader vision of what our founder Charya said about how everyone should not be restricted in the services they do? Prabhupada said many, many times on this particular issue. You know, he said to Professor O'Connell in Toronto, he said in some letters, he said in some lectures, I want every one of my disciples, you know, sons and daughters to accept disciples, etc. So many things Prabhupada said. We know within the Gaudiya history, even today, there's so many Gaudiya missions that have women gurus. We know there's so many examples. However, some people they choose a more narrow understanding. Irmila brought up a point that I hadn't thought about yesterday. She said, you know, if you look at the history of religions in the world, the major religions in the world, you know, we know ultimately we're transcendentalists, we're servants of Krishna, but within that world identification, Prabhupada uses the word Vaishnava all the time. We know we're Vaishnavas. Prabhupada also explains, you know, he says sometimes we're not Hindus, other times he says we are. From a worldly perspective, it comes within the Hindu banner. We're certainly not Jews or Muslims or whatever. But there was the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims in history were the ones that had barriers against women. There's so many women gurus in Hindu history. Many, 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 many. So why is it that a few people who, you know, frankly, some of them are like fallen malechas like me, white-bodied people in India, perhaps bringing their Jewish or Muslim or Christian ideas into India, where Hindus have said for thousands of years that there's no barriers against women being gurus. So, you know, a whole other thought about that. So, I mean, with that particular thing, and your question is, what do we do? Gauranga Prabhu was asked a similar question by a similarly rebellious question asker the other day, and his answer was dialogue, which is true. We should be very concerned. Let's dialogue. Let's try and understand. The next chapter difficulty comes. Bir Krishna Maharaj and I know we were in dialogue for like 1 year with some of the folks with these same arguments. And dialogue means, because I know I've been involved in a lot of organizations over the years, dialogue means by definition you enter into a dialogue with an understanding that you're willing to be changed. I'm willing to hear. You know, you may say some good things and help me change my position. But in some of these dialogues of the past, here's the position. Okay, what about all this other evidence? It's like maybe here's my one bit of evidence. Here's 5 things that contradict it. Here's my one bit of evidence. Well, what about these 5 things? Here's my one bit of evidence. What about these other 27 things of evidence? Here's my one evidence. You know? And even like, here's my evidence 2, 3, and 4. Well, those are from scriptures that our founder Charya never quoted from. Doesn't matter, we're still going to quote them. Well, those are from other people outside of our Sampradaya. Doesn't matter, we're still going to give them as references, etc. You know, so dialogue. Like, that's not really dialogue. So then the challenge comes, okay, you know, sometimes our fellows in India and a few other places, they'll say, well, on this issue of whether women can initiate, what's the big deal? It's a few women. I mean, get over it. Just get over it. You know, like maybe they'll think, I don't initiate. What's the matter if 3 or 4 or 5 women? It's the principle. It's the vision of Lord Chaitanya. Did Lord Chaitanya break open a storehouse of love of God and give it everywhere without discrimination? Did Prabhupada come and say, sometimes they say, well, Prabhupada didn't make any women gurus. Okay, we should follow that then. Prabhupada didn't make any women gurus. The original 11, you can argue whether Prabhupada made them, whatever, but the original 11, there were no women. You're right, we're going to follow that. There were no blacks. There were no Indians. I think they were all Americans. I mean, God forbid the world's run by Americans again, right? There were no, what's that? No Canadians, sorry, even Canadians, right? Right? So obviously, I mean, that's ridiculous. There were none of the original ones were Indian. So anyway, so many things. So dialogue, dialogue, and there needs to be some sense of we want to hear from you. And personally, as a GBC member, I think the GBC made a very wise decision 10 years ago and said, look, this is something that's important for preaching in certain parts of the world. Certain parts of the world don't, not only preaching is important to follow our Acharya, certain parts of the world don't feel this is appropriate. Okay, you don't have to do it. We respect you. You don't have to do it. Okay? But then to come back and say, no, we demand you do what we want, that's not dialogue. That's where it gets tough. That's when it gets really tough. So we'll see. That's when we pray to Krishna. Krishna, why so many reverses? And I've said this before publicly. I really have to commend, so many people. But the women in this movement, the things that they've had to put up with for years and years and years and years. If I was a woman's body, I think I would have become a nun or something. I don't know. I don't know if I would have hung around. But, commending all the ladies. They really put up with a lot of mistreatment over the years. Not just this issue, for sure. But, a lot of mistreatment. But they stayed. Prabhupada comments in many places. In every religious tradition in the world, we see women are the most religious. There's more women in church. There's more women in the mosque. There's more women in the temple. There's more women doing the pujar service. They're pious. By that body, they're more pious. So those are some unplanned responses to your unexpected question, Maharaj. Yeah, the president's not here to tell us to quit. We have to meet at 10 here, right? We don't have to go back and forth today? Old Temple. Okay, so maybe go till 9. Is that okay?
I just have one further question. Can we make an analogy between when Krishna tried to dialogue to stop the battle of Kurukshetra, and they weren't listening to him? Of course, he had to manifest his universal form to scare the bejesus out of them. But
Maharaj, if you would do that, it might help influence this discussion, If you manifest a universal form, it would help. If you can do that, please.
I'm not capable yet.
Okay.
So the point is, Krishna tried his best, and other people tried their best too in the Mahabharata. It wasn't only Krishna. And the Kuru said, we're not going to give you enough land to put under the head of the pin, or 5 pins, or whatever it was. So at a certain point, dialogue has to stop. And my experience, because you related the dialogue that we had for over a year, which was quite interesting and frustrating. And now I'm engaged in another dialogue, which is taking the same form, the same arguments, no back and forth. It's not a dialogue, sorry. It's a monologue. Because there's no, dialogue means both sides hear each other. So what do we do at this point? I mean, urgent action is required because we're getting older. Maybe not you, but I'm getting older, and we have limited time. You pointed that out in class, and Krishna's the time factor. This is an urgent situation. It's an emergency. Sometimes in emergencies, Prabhupada said, you have to do things that are the Bhagavad Gita says that. They're emergency duties that may transcend your normal varnashram duties. So what do we do?
Yes, Maharaj, what do we do?
Well,
I answered the first question. It's your chance to answer the second question.
I think we need to take action. We need to take very strong action, and at the same time remain very faithful to Prabhupada, the GBC structure and everything like that. We need to stand up for our mission, which is being threatened in North America right now. I mean, when you're under threat, there's extraordinary action. For example, Prabhupada gave the example that if your house is on fire, you may not be a fireman or whatever they call it, but you'll go in and try to save someone in the house. And also, if there's a fire, you may not know the language, but you'll make yourself known and address the situation. So we have an emergency situation in North America because of the time factor and because of the social situation in America, and we have very little time left.
And I think part of the problem is, I mean, it's very clear that there was a strategy of people that didn't like this GBC decision. There's a strategy, stall, 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 stall. Because if this isn't sorted out before all the Prabhupada lady disciples pass away or all the Prabhupada disciples in general pass away, then it becomes entrenched in history. Because people will say to, some very advanced Mataji in the future will say, how dare you do this? So-and-so didn't do it, so-and-so didn't do it, so-and-so didn't do it. So it's really setting a precedent. So it's not just a question of, so-and-so dasi, now 2 or 3 or 6 or 10 or 20, whatever it is. It's a question of the future. It really set a policy for the future. And I think that for this generation of Prabhupada's followers, especially, and those of us that are all here in this first generation after Prabhupada's departure, it's really important we think very carefully what are the essential principles that need to be established now and what mistakes could be made that aren't a question of it's just these 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 ladies, Vaishnavis, who perhaps would like to accept disciples. But it's a bigger question. What about the future? What about the future? That's what, as leaders, we're supposed to be thinking about the future. It's not just thinking about today. It's what about the future? What's the future hold?
It's an existential question.
Yeah. Yeah, and those of us, I mean, in the GBC, just so you know, those, representing North America or serving on behalf, I mean, we've been making these arguments and to the point of, coming this far away from resigning a whole bunch of times. But it's like you resign, and then who's going to carry the message? Maybe, because initially, anyway, we don't have to get into history, but, it was passed and then held up and then passed and then held up. And the argument was given, I remember very clearly, the argument was given to the GBC body. You have not heard us. Put a pause. Okay, we'll put a pause. For 1 year, we'll put a pause. For 1 year, we heard and heard and heard and heard and heard and heard and heard. No flexibility, no middle ground, no understanding. Well, okay, what can we, you're concerned that you don't want this to happen in India. What steps can we put in place to make sure it doesn't happen in India? What practical things can we do? That nobody, we want to discuss that for a whole year. And so then the GBC came back and said, okay, we've heard you for a whole year. You said you wanted to be heard, so you were heard. We gave you a whole year. There's nothing new. So now, okay, we're going to have this policy. We reinforce the fact of cultural sensitivity. You don't have to do it. No. Pause. 3-year pause. Now we want a 3-year pause. We're going to study it at the end of 3 years. Oh, we didn't really have time to study it. Now you got to pause it again. So that's when, at a certain point in time, you start thinking like, dialogue is supposed to be in good faith. Is this in good faith, or is this just like a way of manipulating the time factor? So anyway, I think we should stop now. Oh, we have our lawyer, a legal voice in the room who happens to be in the body of a Vaishnava. So last comment.
You have competing principles. How, we're talking about
Yeah.
taking right action, but what
Sure.
if you have competing principles? And yet, as I listen to Maharaj, I'm thinking there really isn't a competing principle, because the principle is the mission. The mission is we are here for Lord Chaitanya's mission. What will serve the mission? And Lord Chaitanya didn't obey the Qazi's injunction not to go out and chant. was illegal, it was improper, and he did it anyway because that was the mission. And so maybe part of the dialogue is to stop saying it's not about playing around here in the details. For a lawsuit, when you get into a lawsuit, you have to deal with some of the details. I mean, they're there, they're important. But you don't lose sight of what's most important, and that's the protection in India. If what serves the mission here is Vaishnavi Diksha Gurus, then the principle is the mission. If it doesn't serve in India, then fine. You do what serves the principle there. And I think Gauranga mentioned that as well. He said yesterday in his conversation, operate locally in ways that will serve the locality. So my provocative question became a diatribe. I'm sorry, but I wanted to throw that in.
Thank you much. Good comment to end on. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.